Welcome to Grow Virtually, an online horticultural educational program presented by the Master Gardener Volunteers of Cobb County. Under the guidance of the University of Georgia Cooperative Extension Service, we grow gardeners. We hope that you find our information informative and helpful. Thanks for watching, and please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
So today we're going to talk about common diseases of ornamental plants. Let me give you just a little background about me. I live in Cobb, East Cobb. I've lived here for almost 26 years. I enjoy all manner of outdoor activities, from gardening to vegetable growing to biking, kayaking, hiking, any excuse to get outside. I became a master gardener last year, 2020, which means I started out in a class with other human beings and I ended virtually. So, but it's been a lot of fun. I volunteer at the Smith Gilbert Gardens, which I find to be very enjoyable, beautiful place. I also have a couple of garden plots in Cobb County, community gardens. And it's my training before I retired. I'm a chemist, PhD chemist, and I worked in the plastics industry. Okay, so let's get started. So we're going to talk today about, despite our best efforts, diseases can occur naturally. Some plant diseases may kill a plant, while others may be more benign and simply cause the plant to be unsightly instead of killing it. We'll spend some time identifying the common plant diseases that affect ornamentals that you might have in your landscaping. We'll also look at understanding some of the signs, symptoms, and causes to help in identifying diseases. Lastly, we'll look at prevention and disease control methods to avoid disease as much as possible, and when to properly treat if necessary. So the disease triangle here shown in the slide helps us to paint a picture of the factors that can lead to infection or disease in the plant. Organisms that cause common diseases in plants are characterized as fungi, bacteria, viruses, and nematodes. Fungi are by far the leading culprit, responsible for something like 85% of plant diseases. For the purposes of this talk, the focus will be on fungi, bacteria, and viruses. A plant susceptible to disease will not necessarily develop the disease. This is because plant disease requires some basic components. Number one, a host that's susceptible to disease, a pathogen such as a fungi or bacteria, which has to be present in or on the host plant, and lastly, a precise environment such as temperature and moisture level. When all three components present in the right conditions, disease will occur. When only one of two of these components are present, disease will not occur, but the plant may be weakened from stress. Once a plant has disease, control becomes the optimal outcome because the cure of the infected plant is generally not an option. To that extent, we will look at some control options for the diseases presented today. As well as we progress in the presentation, note the connection across the diseases. And by the way, since we live in Georgia, hot, humid, it's very conducive to fungi, which I think you're all familiar with. The goal of any gardener is to grow healthy, beautiful plants. While pathogens are always around, prevention becomes an important focus to reduce plant disease. So we want to spend some time on that first. There are cultural controls, in other words, practices that we can do that should be used to reduce disease opportunities. These controls could prevent the need for future chemical control efforts. Sometimes a chemical control may be the best option, however. We start with plant inspection prior to purchasing the plant. Check for things like insects, spots on the leaves and stems, any sign of stress such as drooping or yellowing of leaves. Gardeners can also be generous in sharing their plants, so make sure you are giving and receiving disease-free plants as much as possible. You want to avoid bringing a problem into the garden or creating one in a friend's garden. Create a space with good drainage to eliminate standing water. Many plant diseases are a direct result of poor drainage. As mentioned earlier, the environment plays a key role in determining whether your plants will thrive. Planting in the right location based on planting recommendations will reduce plant stress. If your plant requires sun, shade, or partial shade, make sure your purpose planting site will accommodate your plant. To promote growth and increase the air circulation around your plant, proper spacing according to the planting guidelines, will reduce overcrowding and give the plant room to grow. It will also lessen the chance of disease spread that should occur. All plants need water. However, overwatering and reduced overhead watering especially can reduce the harmful effects of moisture on fostering plant diseases, just as poor drainage can also leave your roots and leaves too wet. When you direct your watering wand, direct it to the base of the plant, not rather than the leaves. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, did I get? Yeah. Okay. Weeds will take any opportunity to grow in your landscape. They may not kill your plant with a disease, but if left untreated, uncontrolled weeds can take over your landscape and rob your plants of the nutrients they need to make them weak. If you haven't had a soil test done, get one to help you access the nutrient needs of your soil and get information on what amendments you might need to add. And by the way, you can get the soil test through the Cobb County Extension Center. Additionally, the soil test can access the amendment needs based on specific plants you may already have or that you desire to plant in a given area. Once you've determined the amendment needs, avoid over-fertilizing. The idea is just a little bit more can be damaging to your plants. Follow the guidelines on the label for maximum benefit. We have talked about overwatering. However, at times of drought, water is even more important to your plants. Do not irrigate regularly, do irrigate regularly, but avoid late afternoon watering to give your leaves a chance to dry. Best time to water is really in the early morning, so the leaves will dry out. Pruning can accomplish a lot in your garden, and it will also help with the humidity. Infected plants may spread disease if conditions persist. Isolate and discard infected plants to prevent further spread. The debris should also be removed and disposed of as lawn refuse, and it's not appropriate for a compost heap because it's not going to get hot enough in a typical compost pile to destroy the mold spores, for example. If a disease is observed, take your cleaning a step further and disinfect your garden tools with Lysol, rubbing alcohol, or a bleach solution. A bleach solution can be made by mixing 1 part bleach to 9 parts water, and then allow your tools to dry. Given that many diseases are fungal, most chemical treatments are fungicides. The products work in 2 different ways, either contact or systemic. Contact fungicides work on the areas of contact to prevent the plant, to protect the plant, but they're not taken up in the plant tissue. So they need to be reapplied, they'll be washed off by rain, and so on. Systemic fungicides are taken up into the plant and distributed to the plant parts. You will probably find most products to be in a liquid form. If a chemical is needed to control the disease, use it sparingly and efficiently by following directions on the label for the disease. As with fertilizer, using too much of a chemical can be just as harmful to your plants and can result in scorch or dead plant tissue. Consult the Georgia Pest Management Handbook for any references throughout this presentation for fungicides. There is a 2021 home edition now available through UGA. However, if you have any questions, you can contact the UGA Extension Office for assistance. When working with any chemical agent, please read and follow the labeled instructions on proper use and proper use. 1 second here. And also applications for optimal conditions. As we see a lot that as gardeners we can do with cultural practices to prevent and control the spread of disease in our gardens. Since most plant diseases are fungal in nature, it is important to understand a little bit about them. Fungi are most commonly spread through spores. You can think of a spore like a seed to a plant. Fungi spores can travel long distances by air movement and shorter distances by splattered water. Mycetes are your water molds and diseases and may also include root rots and some blights. Most fungi will thrive in moist, humid environment. Prevention and control are especially important because of the heightened potential for spread. Since there are different types of fungi, treatment with fungicides that can effectively control diseases caused by one fungi may have no impact on those caused by another. When used, proper chemical control will need to be specific to the fungi identified. We will now look at some different diseases and their management strategies. Cultural practices discussed earlier will be recommended throughout the different disease states. Prolonged wetness favors leaf spot disease. Let's look at the impact of leaf spot on several ornamentals. Here is a picture of a leaf spot on a zinnia. The particular fungus is called Ultimaria, may also affect dianthus, impatiens, marigold, and geranium. Symptoms include large reddish brown or purple spots with gray or tan centers that may drop out, leaving a hole. Severely infected leaves will brown and become dry and brittle. Round blotches, distinct tan centers, and reddish border are very evident on this iris infected by Alternaria fungus. You can see those on the leaf here. Leaf spot symptoms vary with each host. Septoria fungus on the mum leaf starts with a small round spot that can spread into large brown blotches with tan or gray centers. This fungus can also affect dogwood, phlox, rudbeckia, and other ornamentals. On dogwood, Septoria leaf spots tend to be more angular with dark purple margins. Notice the zone of yellow tissue and gray centers. There are small black pimple-like fruiting structures within these leaf spots that will eventually release new spores. Leaf spot on this ligustrum is referred to as frog eye and is caused by the fungus Syndrospora. The fungus causes numerous small, roughly circular, tan to brown leaf spots with reddish purple borders. This fungus may also affect juniper, hydrangea, azaleas, and pansies. The big leaf hydrangea leaf spots pictured here are actually caused by two different fungi. One is the Serous on the left. Don't get caught up with the fungi names mentioned because the Extension Office can help you identify the causing pathogen when you share a photo with us. Note here that we have different fungi causing leaf spots that present differently. While one big leaf hydrangea presents with purple margins and tan centers, the other has large necrotic areas, large areas of dead leaf. On Azalea, Syndrospora leaf spots are initially small and reddish, but they enlarge rapidly with the center of the spot turning an ash gray color. On the Azalea and pansy, small black specks can be observed within the spot's center. These spots are actually a mass of spores that can further spread the disease. As mentioned earlier on in this presentation, prevention is the key to reducing plant disease. Early detection may reduce the severity of a problem, so inspect your plants regularly to address any issues early. With too much water being the primary reason for fungal leaf spot diseases, reduce leaf wetness by avoiding overhead and late evening watering. Also, increasing air circulation will reduce humidity and can be accomplished with pruning and proper plant spacing. Any diseased leaf debris that has fallen should be removed, as fungi can survive on the effective plant debris, and actually the spores can be kicked back up onto fresh leaves by rain, for example. If you find that a fungicide is required, use it to prevent disease or when you first notice it. Because all fungi cannot be treated with the same fungicide, treatment must be specific for the fungus. Should you decide to just replace the plant because of the damage that warrants it, consider replacing it with a less susceptible cultivar. Black spot is the most important infectious disease of roses, and I have a lot of hands-on experience with this because I'm part of the Rose Warrior group at the Smith Gilbert Garden. It occurs only on roses and is widespread among many rose species and cultivars, although some of the shrub roses and rugosa roses show more resistance. Many hybrid tea roses are very susceptible. Long, wet, and warm spring weather increases leaf wetness and humidity, making it ideal for roses to be affected. Signs of the disease are circular black spots surrounded by a yellow area. The infected leaves will often fall off the plant. Plant growth is reduced and fewer flowers will be produced. The fungus overwinters on the fallen leaves and diseased canes. Spores are then splashed to newly emerging leaves and stem tissue in the spring. Because the spores can germinate and infect in one day, leaf, flower, and cane tissue can be affected within 10 to 11 days. So this points up the importance of removing any diseased leaves, stems, etc., and getting them out of your garden. The impact of rose black spot can ruin a rose garden. Sanitation is very important to reduce the spread of this disease. Infected mulch and leaves on the ground should be removed and properly discarded. Infected canes should be pruned as well and discarded. Fresh mulch should be applied to the bed before new roses bloom in the spring. Again, look for resistant varieties where possible. Pruning will help with air circulation and reduces plant humidity. Any new planting should be properly spaced to also promote air circulation and plant growth. Keep the foliage dry with reduced overhead watering and use a soaker hose so that you release the water right around the root system rather than overhead. Remember that roses also need to be planted where they would get lots of sun. Fungicides are available to control rose black spot and should be used when the disease conditions are favorable at the first sign of disease. Leaf and flower galls is a fungal disease that causes leaves to become swollen, curled, waxy, and fleshy, as shown in this picture here. Typically, the galls occur in the spring with wet, humid, and cool weather. The swollen plant tissue, or galls, are made up of abnormal plant tissue. In early disease, the galls are pale green, and the infected flowers are usually pinkish. As the disease progresses, a white layer covers the infected plant parts, while supplies the spores for the next year's infection. Galls eventually turn brown or black, harden, and then fall off. Lower leaves on plants are usually the most seriously damaged, but under humid conditions and in shaded locations, galls may occur at the ends of upper branches. Azaleas, rhododendron, camellia, mountain laurel, and blueberry plants are susceptible. Leaf galls are common among azaleas in the spring when the weather is wet, humid, and cool. The leaf and the flower bud are only affected. When galls turn to the white moldy-like growth, the spores can spread at this point. While they are unsightly, they do not cause significant plant damage. Flower petals are swollen on the catawba rhododendron, exhibiting a soft, fleshy appearance. Notice in the slide on the right that only the backside of the leaves turn white on the Camellia leaf gall. And again, this whiteness is caused by the spores that the fungi produce. White galls can be very unsightly. They do not typically cause significant plant damage, however. The galls on leaves and flowers should be removed as soon as detected. It is important to remove them before the white layer develops, since this will provide spores for the fungus to infect next year. Fungicides are generally not recommended here. However, if you choose to use a fungicide, application must coincide with the bud break. Otherwise, the fungi treatment will not be effective once the galls have developed. Fungi that cause powdery mildew may be host-specific, or it may affect a variety of plants. Woody and herbaceous plants are susceptible and include those listed in the slide shown here, and may also include elm, deciduous azaleas, begonia, and various annual and perennial flowers. The fungus thrives in the spring with warm days and cool nights and can develop on dry leaf surfaces. The flower buds, leaves, and stems can be affected. The mildew appears on the upper side of the leaf surface, and the fungus can remain dormant in buds and continue to infect. While we saw the impact of water on leaves and leaf spot, powdery mildew does not require leaf wetness for infection to develop. Unsightly, dusty white appearance on leaves, flowers, and stems are spores of the fungus. All of the infected tissue is usually distorted and colored. and discolored. While it may not kill the plant, it does weaken it. The powdery mildew has infected both the flower and the leaves on this mum, as shown in this picture. The gray fungal growth is characteristic of powdery mildew on the daisy on the right. Symptoms of powdery mildew on bee balm are more severe with overcrowding and when planted in partial shade. Note that the infection has spread to the flowers and the leaves. The fungus can remain dormant in road beds and continue to infect. Flowers, buds, leaves, and stems may be infected and distorted on crepe myrtles. Another example shown in this slide is a fungus on dogwood leaves, powdery mildew. Varies of euonymus may be infected with powdery mildew. Management strategies include increasing air circulation and pruning with plant spacing to help reduce humidity. Although the fungus can develop on dry surfaces, can also develop on dry surfaces. Reduce the spread by removing infected plant parts, and any plant parts on the ground should be taken away and properly disposed. The disease can be hard on roses, and you may have to develop regular preventive spray program. Given the variety of fungi responsible for powdery mildew, fungicides must be specific for treatment. Do note that once infected with a fungus, the white appearance remains on the plant. Even though treated with a fungicide, the white appearance will still remain on the plant. Water in mid-morning so the leaves will dry out more rapidly. Powdery mildew is less of a problem during the heat of the summer. Lastly, you may want to consider purchasing resistant varieties to replace the diseased plants. Gray mold causes a range of disease symptoms on a wide range of plants as seen in this slide. The fungus will present as a fuzzy grayish brown spores. Flower buds may be discolored or dead, and the leaves and flowers may present with spots and or blights. Leaf spots may grow and turn the entire leaf brown. The disease develops under cool, moist, high humidity, and cloudy conditions. It grows on weakened or dead tissues and can survive on decaying plant material such as fallen flower petals. Healthy plant parts such as leaf in contact with the fungus on the flower may also become infected. Photos of the gray mold are shown on a geranium and a mum. The fuzzy grayish spores are quite evident here. Leaf spots have combined here to form a large gray brownish blight area on impatiens and also on plant tissue. The blossoms of the petunia may eventually turn brown and fall off prematurely, shown on the right. As we have seen, botrytis gray mold can cause blights on flowers, leaves, and stems. Management strategies are both cultural and chemical. Start by removing all declining and infected leaves and flowers to reduce the spread. Reduce humidity with proper watering and plant spacing. These strategies will also aid in increasing leaf dryness. Previous issues may require preventive treatment if conditions are favorable for disease. To reduce fungicide resistance, vary the product and the method of application. Azalea petal blight affects both azaleas and rhododendrons. Flower infection starts with round pale spots and these advance to irregular blotches. Flowers quickly turn brown, limp, and mushy. When the humid conditions affected flowers are covered with a white mold growth. Affected blooms hang on the plants for weeks or even months. Hard black fruiting bodies are produced on the infected blooms and eventually drop from the plant carrying the fungus. This is a photo that shows a rhododendron flower blight that has killed the blooms and the buds. Remove infected flower debris to reduce spread. Infected flowers that have not fallen should also be removed. Fungicide can be applied at the base of the plant to try to prevent spores, but this is only marginally effective. If you have a large area of azalea plantings, considering applying the fungicide just before blooming starts and continue at the manufacturer's suggested intervals throughout the blooming period. Flower blight of camellia flowers begins with the development of brown spots on the petals. Not all the blossoms are affected. Leaves, stems, and roots are not attacked. These blights quickly enlarge until the entire flower is brown and dry and leathery and drops from the plant. Dark brown veins in lighter brown petals are a characteristic symptom of this disease. Fungus presents at the base of the flower. It persists in the soil from fallen flowers, causing reinfection. Disease development is favored by cool, wet conditions. All species and varieties of camellia appear equally susceptible to this blight. Sanitation is the first and most important step in controlling the spread of the disease. Rake up all fallen blossoms from under the plants and remove any blighted flowers that remain on the plant to reduce the spore development in the following year. Remove and replace mulch under the plants periodically. Fresh mulch will prevent spore release. Other cultural controls, such as increasing ventilation, avoiding overhead watering, should also be initiated. A fungicide spray may be used if desired to help reduce further infections. Canker is a fungal disease that girdles and will kill the stem and branches. The canker develops when the fungus gets between the bark of the tree and bark and the tree wood, eventually killing the bark. Different fungi can affect different hosts. The fungal organisms that cause the diseases form spores all summer long. Therefore, infection can take place at any time. Leland cypress trees are especially susceptible during drought-stressed hot weather. One of the most notable symptoms of cankers is the yellowing or browning of the foliage, which leads to a twig and branch dieback. Cankers appear dark brown or purple. May appear dark brown and purple, slightly sunken with raised margins, and may also be accompanied by resin exudate that flows down the diseased branches. Cankers enlarge along the branch more quickly than around its circumference. New infections develop when spores lodge in the bark cracks and wounds. Rain or overhead irrigation also promotes the spread of these spores. Branch dieback resulting from cankers can occur on many woody ornamentals, including holly, rhododendron, azalea, rose, dogwood, yew, elm, and many others. Pictured is dieback on a Leland cypress and rhododendron. Dieback starts at the tip and progresses until the entire twig and the branch turn brown and die. Pruning affected branches is the best control option. The best time to prune is late dormancy before the buds break. Any branches showing wilt or discoloration should be pruned out and destroyed. Minimize physical damage to the plants, as pruning can wounds can provide a route of entry for the fungus. Water plants to prevent drought stress, especially during late summer and autumn. Also, don't forget to sanitize the pruning tools between cutting by dipping them in rubbing alcohol or bleach solution to destroy any fungus that might remain on the tool itself. All of the diseases we have looked at so far are the result of fungi. Bacterial diseases, however, can also cause leaf spots and stem rots. Bacterial leaf spot pathogens require films of water for plant entry. Fresh infections on the foliage may appear as angular leaf spots or water-soaked areas concentrated along leaf veins. These may develop into large, irregular, rotted areas with yellow or translucent halos. The spread of a lesion on a leaf may be limited by the leaf veins, giving it an angular shape. Bacterial leaf spot and stem canker are often a problem on English ivy, but begonias and geraniums are also susceptible. Favorable conditions for infection include high humidity, crowding, poor air circulation around the plants. Stem rots appear as soft tissue resulting from plant wounds or insect feeding. When leaf stems are attacked, they become black and shriveled. The bacteria often move down these diseased leaf stems to infect the main stem, causing dieback of the major branches. Ornamental plants can eventually wilt and die from this bacterial disease. So it's very important to prune off these any diseased branches before they can infect the rest of the plant. Pictured here is a bacterial leaf spot on ivy and zinnia. Note the yellow halo around the dark spots. Recall that the fungal leaf spot on the zinnia presented with a purple border and gray centers. This bacterial disease can cause cankers on the stems which girdle it and cause the entire stem to die. Bacterial cankers caused by Pseudomonas may also affect ornamental cherries, cherry laurels, plums and pears, lilacs, and roses. Cankers may form on branches and trunks and often ooze a gummy, resinous substance, and the wood in the cankered area may be discolored. Branch dieback will typically occur along with the fruit rot. Note the dying canes on the rose here and the oozing canker on the cherry tree. Management strategies are both cultural and chemical. Avoid leaf wetness as we showed before by reducing overhead irrigation. Also increase air circulation by pruning. Prune in the dry weather when any branches that have cankers on them. Prune at least 12 inches below the canker or any other dead tissue and destroy the infected branches. Remove any debris on the ground to help reduce the infection spread. Copper fungicide may be helpful, but a strict sanitation program must be maintained. Make sure that all tools are disinfected before storing for the next pruning. Fire blight caused by the Erwinia bacterium is highly infectious and affects pears, quince, cotton Easter, pyracantha, photonia, and crabapple. This disease is most prevalent during blooming and warm, rainy spring weather between months of April and June. Symptoms present as twigs and branches that appear burned or have a deep rust and die from the terminal end. You may also notice that some branches bend, resembling a shepherd's crook. Dead leaves and fruit usually remain on the tree branch. Prune out branches 6 to 8 inches below any signs of damage, and then again disinfect the tools with a 70% isopropyl alcohol or 10% bleach solution between each cut. Limit nitrogen fertilizer, especially in the summer. Also avoid splashing water to reduce the spread on to other plants. Consider purchasing of fire blight resistant varieties for your garden. Streptomycin or copper-containing products applied during bloom may also help to control the disease. Viruses may enter plants in different ways depending on the type. Transmission may occur by feeding by insects, through hands, tools, and other equipment, plant cuttings, or grafting. Virus symptoms are often striking and distinctive, such as an odd color pattern on the leaf, ring spots, mosaics, stem lesions and leaf yellowing, and line patterns on the foliage or stems. Stunting growth is also very common. There are a variety of plants that can be affected by a virus if the conditions are favorable, as shown on this slide. Rosette is a viral disease that is spread on roses by a tiny mite. The virus is host-specific, but most cultivars are susceptible. The virus presents with thickened stems, excessive thorns, and a witch's broom growth, a cluster of shoots on the branches near the same area. Once infected, the virus moves throughout the entire plant. Leaves may become distorted and buds may fail to bloom. There is no cure for this disease. There are some general management strategies for viral plant diseases, and those are also applied to rosette. Inspect your plants regularly for early disease detection. If you have any symptomatic plants, you may want to test to confirm and get specific virus diagnosis, especially if it is a plant other than a rose. Contact the extension office if you want a diagnostic test. The office will require a sample of the diseased plant, and the sample will be submitted to UGA Plant Disease Clinic for further study. Control your landscape weeds and destroy any infected plants. Because viruses can be transmitted by insects, especially in the case of rose rosette, manage the insects to reduce the introduction and spread of the virus. Once a rose is infected, there is no cure and pruning will not be effective. In summary, we have covered a number of ornamental plant diseases and seen that most of them are caused by fungi. Regularly inspecting your plants will be important to provide early detection of any disease. Correctly identifying the disease will also improve your ability to control your problem, whether it's cultural or chemical methods are used. If chemical applications are used, always follow the manufacturer label for proper application. To try to reduce plant disease in the beginning by practicing the prevention controls early and maintaining good sanitation in your landscape. Keep in mind that chemical control may be needed sometimes for preventive measures maybe use preventive measures depending on the favorable disease conditions. Okay, so we're getting now to the end of the talk. So this slide lists the some resources that are available if you're having any of these issues. You know, these again, and again, you can always contact the extension office. You'll get somebody on the phone like myself or another Master Gardener volunteer who can either answer your questions immediately or look up answers and get back to you with some suggestions.
Thank you for watching. If you would like more information, a copy of the resources used in this presentation, the questions and answers, and more about who we are and what we do, please visit our website at www.cobbmastergardeners.com.